to this gathering put on by the IFBTA and the National Restaurant Association. Where does IT fit on the supply chain? So let me go ahead and introduce our panel today and our session. I'm Rob Grimes. I'm the CEO of the IFBTA. And first, let me start with some housekeeping items. So please make sure that you keep off your video and mute your audio. You should have been muted when you came on, but we need to have them off during this session. If you have questions, please submit those questions or comments through the chat button at the bottom of your screen and just send it to all panelists and organizers, and we will be able to get those and we will address them during the open Q&A. We want to refrain from asking any questions that regard sales, pricing, political commentary, or any disparaging remarks. And a recording of this webinar will be made available after the call via the ifbta.org and through the National Restaurant Association and their expert exchange. Let me go ahead and cover the agenda for today. So we're going to start out with a panel discussion on where does IT fit on the supply chain. And I'll introduce our panelists in just a moment. After the discussion, we're going to go into separate breakout rooms, and you will be broken out into different groups, and each room is going to have a facilitator in it who is going to lead the discussion in your room. After the discussions are done, you'll come back into the main session, and we will have reports from the facilitators on the things that you discussed. And then after that, we hope you'll join us for the virtual happy hour, just so we can continue the conversation and network with our peers. Well, let me introduce Seamus Hanlon with the National Restaurant Association. Seamus?
Thanks, Rob, and welcome everybody who's been able to join us today. We appreciate it and look forward to a compelling session here in a few minutes. A little bit about the National Restaurant Association. You may know some of this, you may not, but we are the largest restaurant and food service industry association in the world. We represent over 1 million restaurant locations across the country, across the United States. We work at 3 levels. We work at the national, at the state, and the local level. We work in conjunction with the state restaurant associations, and we look for every opportunity to serve, promote, and protect your businesses and the industry at large. We do that by taking into account the needs and objectives of all restaurateurs and food service operators across the country. We do that by meeting with them and bringing groups together like we're doing so today. And we're delighted to be partnered with IFBTA in this effort. Technology is playing a more important role than ever, as we all know, and especially at this time during COVID. And so we're delighted to be working with Rob and his organization, and we feel like it's a very good fit in talking about the supply chain function. So again, welcome, and we look forward to hearing your thoughts later today.
Great, thank you, Seamus. Let me take a moment and introduce you to the IFBTA, the International Food and Beverage Technology Association. We're a not-for-profit trade association that's focused on food and beverage technology, but across all sectors of food and beverage technology, from lodging to C-stores to stadiums and arenas, and of course restaurants and other types of food service as well. But our main function is the promotion, networking, and education of technology within the industry. Our membership is open to all. That includes suppliers and operators. Everyone has an equal seat at the table in the discussions that we have, and we reach people through our local and regional chapters, industry events. We also have a virtual chapter, and then we have a lot of partnerships with the industry, but one of our most valued one is the National Restaurant Association and its various communities, especially the IT community, but also the states as well, where we provide programs on a local and regional basis. And then the last piece is we offer a certification program that helps operators to understand technology used within the industry. So with that, let me go ahead and thank our title sponsor for today, Fortinet. And with Fortinet, I'd like to introduce Sean Riley, who is the Senior Director of Retail Sales, and he's going to say a few words of welcome. Sean?
Yes, thanks, Rob. I appreciate it. Hi, everybody. How's everybody doing? This is Sean Riley. I'm the Senior Director of Retail Sales at Fortinet for North America. And if you guys don't know with Fortinet, but we are a networking security company that that does quite a bit of business in food and beverage, and a lot of the sub verticals of restaurant and fast casual, as well as quick serve restaurant, QSR. And customers of ours are utilizing our technology for a lot of the things that you probably would think, improving customer experiences, enhancing drive-through experience, contactless payments, things of that nature. And really, the main piece is, helping you guys secure yourself from the internet. So we take the IFBTA membership pretty seriously. We are a proud member and obviously a title sponsor. Every single one of my team members are certified IFBTA professional as well. So we take a lot of pride in that. And if you guys have any questions or want to chat about what you guys are looking to do, or just chat about our organization, what we've done for some other companies, you can always find us, at Fortinet.com/retail, or you can connect to the entire team at retail@Fortinet.com. And one of the team members will definitely get back to you as soon as possible, because we basically eat, sleep, and breathe retail, and obviously the sub vertical being food and beverage. So hopefully you guys see a lot of value out of the content today and appreciate it. IFBTA for putting this on, and I'll give it back to Rob Grimes. Rob?
Thank you, Sean. And thank you to Fortinet. Let me just point out before I introduce our panel that two things. First of all, the Fortinet is also an allied member of the National Restaurant Association. So they really are working on it from both sides, because there's certainly a lot of value in what they bring across the industry, not just to the operator side of the restaurant industry, and the technology side. There's a lot of different things there. And secondly, it's great to have you as our title sponsor, not only for this session, but the next one, because technology and data security, especially during these times of the last 6 to 9 months, have become even more important. And that is going to relate to supply chain, food safety, as well, and how do we protect the data, and how do we protect the networks and things that provide that. But of course, that is going to be part of the discussion we're going to have today with our panel. So with that, if our panelists would please make sure to have your microphones and your video turned on, I'm going to go ahead and take us to the next piece. So we have a great panel today, and it's a very diverse panel of speakers. We have George Anthony, who is the systems administrator for Five Guys Enterprises, but he, as systems administrator, his title is a little bit misleading, because he works with 2 feet in this, as you're going to hear, one in the technology side, and then the other one in the supply chain, and then in the whole back office side of things. We have Carl Mount, who is the Senior Vice President of Supply Chain and Operations at Starbucks globally. And we have Dan Simons, who's the founder and co-owner of Farmers Restaurant Group. But I know I'm not going to do enough justice talking about their organizations and where their focus is and their perspective. So what I'd like to do is ask each one of our panelists, and we'll start with you, Carl, to give a little bit of the background of your responsibilities, what you're doing, and also what your perspective is today in the industry and where your focus is. Carl?
Great. Thank you, Rob. I appreciate it. And I think hopefully everybody can see me and hear me. It is my pleasure to be with you this afternoon. Again, my name is Carl, and I've been with Starbucks about 3.5 years. Came over from Yum! Brands prior to that, where I was the Global Chief Supply Chain Officer. And certainly you all know Starbucks, so I don't need to explain kind of the brand. Hopefully you've all visited this morning already and picked up your drink before the day started out and got a little caffeinated. Or one of our competitors is fine. As long as you go out and support your restaurant industry right now, we're all super pleased with that, because it's a tough industry to be in these days. Unlike a few of our panelists like George, I am a typical supply chain guy. I'll tell you that IT and what I need out of IT is something that I know what I need for use out of IT, but I refer to my specialists in my technology group to get me what I need, because my technical expertise stops right away at about supply chain. So from there, I can tell you a little bit about what we're looking at Starbucks. I think Starbucks has a lot of legacy systems that we've been using for years. And the last few years, we've been super focused on trying to get rid of some of those legacy systems and move our systems into today's technology. And whether that is cloud systems to replace our legacy systems and sometimes spreadsheets, or whether that's intelligence and trying to predict what our customers want. Certainly within supply chain itself, we're using a lot of technology right now in predicting our store replenishment. And so from that standpoint, instead of the store manager putting in their orders or them manipulating a recommended order that was there, we're getting to the point now where we've got a pretty significant test in place where between artificial intelligence and machine learning and our forecasting, we're able to predict exactly what that order is going to be and just ship it to the store. So we're spending a lot of time around that. Other areas from a supply chain that we're spending time on as well is some of the more traditional supply chain areas. So inventory visibility. We certainly had inventory visibility into our distributors, but this full end-to-end inventory view and inventory flow, and having that all in a single system that allows us to balance inventory flow much better and move from point to point without manipulating between systems is something we're working on significantly and made some huge progress in. Inside of our stores, I think operators a lot of times inside the store don't think of the back of the house and the front of the house as supply chain territory, if you want to think of that. But we're also getting very involved in this inventory flow methodology and mindset to try to let our retail operators understand that managing that back of the house for them is one of our jobs in supply chain. Now, we don't come out and say we're taking over the back of the house for you. We do it in a much more politically correct way, but that's what we're doing in many cases. So if we're going to ship them an order, we also want to take away the tasks of anybody inside the store actually having to take the inventory. So we're doing a lot of work on ways to automate that inventory tasks, certainly to allow them to focus their time on the customer. We're also playing with a lot of things related to IoT. So we have IoT sensors in most of our equipment now in our stores. So whether you're talking about a new Mastrena 2 espresso machine, that IoT signal being able to tell the technician when it needs a preventative maintenance, to be able to predict maintenance much better, and other areas where we're utilizing IoT as well. So I can go on for quite some time on different areas that we're focused on, because fortunately, as a big player in the industry, we've got the resources, we got the people against it. And like I said, my supply chain side knows what I want. And then I go to my VP of technology who sits right next to me. We have a dedicated VP of technology that reports up into our technology group, but is fully allocated to kind of supply chain and his team to support us. So that's a benefit that I think I get in the business. So Rob, a couple thoughts from me on that, and we'll leave more for later in questions.
I don't know. You sort of sounded like an IT guy yourself. Maybe the wall is too thin between you and your next door neighbor. So with that, let me introduce Dan Simons with Founding Farmers. And Dan, do you want to share your perspective and introduce Founding Farmers to our audience?
Sure, Rob. Thanks for having me, and thanks to everybody for putting this panel on. It's a pleasure to be here. So, my name's Dan Simons. I am especially after you follow a Starbucks guy, I am a small, whatever the words are, smaller than small on the scale. I'm a restaurateur. We have 7 restaurants in our group. Pre-COVID, we did about $85 million a year. So even though we don't have a lot of units, we do a fair amount of volume. And what makes our company unique is that our whole business model is about being majority owned by American family farmers. So the company exists essentially to put mission over profit, but it is still certainly a for-profit business. And what we try to do with that profit is get it back to the farmers who invest in the business. So it helps farmers get a greater share of the food dollar, whether they are suppliers or they are just investors. And in some farmers' cases, they are both suppliers and investors. And, American family farmers continue to be under an incredible amount of pressure. If you look at the charts of the independent family farmers' share of the food dollar over the last, 5 decades, it's just done this. So restaurants are one place that these farmers can participate with us directly, and also hopefully role model, for other restaurants in the industry, that if you pay attention to your supply chain, it really makes a difference to the independent Americans that are the backbone of of what we think our food supply chain should be, rather than big corporate producers on the food side, on the production and growing side. So for me, on a panel like this, where we're talking about supply chain and technology and how these things come together, you know, I wish I had a big IT department and a big supply chain department, but we really come at it from this small restaurateur or small business approach. So what we're focused on with our supply chain is shortening it and what we call unbundling it. We really want the value adders to either be at the source. Let's get farmers to have more innovation so they can add more value at the source or expand their product line. And then let's get the end users, the restaurateurs, to be the value adders, and let's shorten all of what happens in the middle, because over time what's happened is the profit and the revenue ends up in the middle. It's tougher on the farmer, and it's tougher on the restaurant, on the operator, and the consumer on the end. So it's an exciting challenge, and as difficult as it is when you're small and have limited resources, we and our farmer partners invested in an 18-wheeler. And so we shrink the supply chain to run some of that distribution at break even, just to accomplish the goal of moving product so that we can pay more on one end or the other. Technology wise, we struggle with the whole tech sprawl. What we end up finding is, one application to perform a certain, whether it's an inventory function or a communication function, or helping us be more efficient with some of those suppliers. And then we end up with this app and this app and this app and this app. So I'm always trying to learn best practices, watch what the big guys do, watch what the innovators like, Five Guys or Starbucks is able to do. And then I'm always hoping as a small regional company to look at those best practices and see how we adapt them into our environment. So as much as it's a struggle, what I love about these conversations is it's also, whether you're a huge company and you're thinking about supply chain and tech, or you're small like we are, you can always find points of difference. I can't out Starbucks. I can't out Five Guys. But what I can do is look for unique ways to bring together our approach to supply chain and the technology we use to, find points of difference and then be able to convey those to our customers. So those are some of the things that go through my mind, and I look forward to hearing the discussion today.
Great, thank you, Dan. Let me go ahead and transition over to George Anthony at Five Guys.
Hi, good afternoon. Thanks for having me today. I appreciate it. I've been with Five Guys for about 5 years now. Prior to that, I worked for a back office software company, ironically, one that I still work in now, called Crunch Time. Prior to that, I had about 20 years of experience as an operator. So I feel the pain that a lot of us go through with trying to source product, get things into our inventory, manage control costs. With Five Guys, we've got 1,600 locations domestically. So what we have in simplicity as far as our menu goes, with burgers and fries, we make up with volume. A lot of that volume gets translated into purchasing, and then that purchasing flows down into inventory and cost of goods, things of that nature. So my job primarily, I work. I'm on the IT team. I work in the Crunch Time platform, but I work directly with our purchasing team. So our purchasing team, they're not, I'm a go-between between our vendors and our purchasing team. And when new products come in that need to be mapped so they can be counted and inventoried and all that fun stuff, that goes through my integration team. So to make it easier for our locations. So our locations, we want them to focus on the guest. That's the goal. We want them in the back office application as little as possible. So we need to streamline things to make sure that things are available for them. And when they need to place that order, that it goes through, not only does it go through to the vendor, but it does get received and the product actually comes into the building. So making it easier with suggested order, using last order, anything that we can do, anything that we can leverage to make the process easier for them, ultimately trickles down to giving better service. making more money because our cost of goods are better, and providing an environment for our employees that isn't frustrating. So we're trying to remove as many of the technical obstacles as possible. So right now we process, in total through our integrations, probably about 80,000 files a day that have to factor in. They're not all, purchasing and invoices, but they have to do with, depletion of recipe items through menu mix and sales mix files and labor files and things of that nature. But every one of our 1,600 locations is placing an order at least 2 times a week. And those files then in return need to get processed and reconciled in to keep their inventory in check. And, we run a perpetual inventory. So at any given day, someone could walk into any one of our locations and spot check and see if, see if everything is the way it should be. So in short, without getting too, technical, and if there are other areas of questions, I'd be happy to answer. The way that my team works with the purchasing team and along with the vendors allows all of our locations to thrive. So I look forward to answering any questions. I appreciate you having me here today, and I want to hear the rest of the story.
Great. Well, thank you, George, and thank you to Carl and Dan for your overview, because you've actually created a lot of discussion. So before we get started, let me remind you that if you do have questions, please submit them in the chat, and we will go ahead and take them during the Q&A when we have about 10 minutes left. Well, let me put it this way. You guys really have opened up a lot of different discussion points. And Dan, I'd like to come back to you on something, because you may be small, but boy, you have a lot of different things going on. And somewhere along the line, I believe that you own your own 18-wheeler. And I'd like to just sort of understand what that's about, but also how that fits into the supply chain, because it sounds like you are the supply chain.
Yeah, so our largest farmer partner and the majority owner is a group of family farmers from North Dakota, the North Dakota Farmers Union. So they invested in an 18-wheeler, and they have a driver as a full-time employee with benefits and a good secure job. And we run that truck twice a month. Starts in North Dakota. We kind of run it through the Midwest. We pick up some products along the way. We dip down to Kentucky. We pick up some grits from some Amish farmers and a mill down there, and then we run it into DC. And then we work with Keeney Produce in DC to do the last mile for us. So we bring the full truck into a regional produce distributor because they're delivering to our stores every day. And so that's how we do that. And what it's enabled us to do. I mean, I can just tell you, I was stunned when I actually realized, the price of a pound of sugar. If you actually buy it from the source, you run your own distribution at essentially, break even and get it to us, whether it's a pound of sugar or a case of potatoes. I mean, I just saw price drops were dramatic. And that was really, a tangible example that I have of how much money is in the middle of the supply chain. And if you add on more trucks, more brokers, more layers, then the money's just in the middle. So it's been really valuable for us to keep our prices down.
And are you connected to the farmers themselves?
We are. And then we have one logistics manager who actually also sort of works part-time on this, and then part-time with the North Dakota Farmers Union on another project management job. And we flow orders through him, and then he dispatches the orders out and plans the pickup time with the farmers. So it's, it is something that we can scale up a bit. It's not necessarily something that I think you could scale in a huge way, but this is why I'm always advocating for the regional systems and the smaller systems, because they really are resilient. Look, for example, when everybody else was freaking out in COVID about what they couldn't get, in the kind of the March, April, May, for everything that was coming on that truck, we had no concerns because we understood where it was and it wasn't facing any of the massively consolidated either manufacturing aggregators or shipping aggregators. So there is a benefit to that and the resilience perspective.
Well, so you obviously have your hands on every aspect, and you know where everything is. So Carl, I'm going to take this one over to you because you're on the exact opposite end, but some of your challenges are probably very similar, just in a larger scope. I was at my Starbucks across the street at 4:30 this morning, and by the way, I have my Thanksgiving dinner coming from Dan, and I'm looking out at my parking lot at Five Guys, so equal opportunity offender. So Carl, you work with a lot of micro farmers and growers of beans. You have a supply chain that's a global supply chain. You can walk in any Starbucks and you're going to see that. How do you control that? And how do you stay in touch when you have so many different points coming in and so many points going out, and yet you're also dealing with independent farmers and growers and then you have travel issues and everything else going on in this challenging environment. How do you do that?
Absolutely. Thanks, Rob, for the question. And just to put a perspective, we deal with about 380,000 small farms around the world. And that's in about 30 coffee producing countries that are out there. And, you guys know that the primary coffee producers in the world are Brazil, Colombia, Latin America. Yeah. I think somebody's not on mute there. But I think what we've been working on, if we look back at our 50 years in Starbucks, the reality is that we formed, the coffee side of the business based on relationships with small farmers. And so, for the vast majority of those 50 years, it's been about having boots on the ground, and we still have huge boots on the ground. We have 9 coffee families or coffee support centers around the world. And that's actually our own agronomists and scientists that are actually in region supporting those farmers and their methodologies and giving them tips on everything from fertilization to yield on products and things like that. So those relationships can only be built through kind of that handshake approach, looking them in the eye. But where we're moving towards now is starting to create traceability. And not just traceability based on physical traceability and bills of lading and knowing what farm it came from, and then what dry mill and wet mill it went to. But we've just recently launched, and at our scale, this is substantial because we have had people in our industry that are much smaller scale, specialty coffee houses and things do traceability efforts. But we've launched a traceability tool that right now is customer focused. But if you scan the back of any of our coffee bags that you buy in store or on the grocery store shelf, you can basically, through the technology of our traceability, look back into what region of the world that came from, and it might be multiple regions if it's a blend, and actually to the farm that it came from, and then through the roasting plant and things like that. So I'm excited about that traceability, but here's where I'm more excited, and we're still working together, and Conservation International is our partner on this. It's one thing for the consumer to have that feel-good feeling about saying, hey, I know where my coffee's coming from. But that same blockchain technology that we're using to allow the consumer-facing traceability, we're now working really hard, and it's not completely done yet, but we're trialing it in 3 countries right now. Colombia, Costa Rica, and in, I'm having a mind blank on Rwanda is the African country, where we're on that farmer's handheld. And everybody in the world has handhelds now and their little personal device. We'll be able to provide that farmer with blockchain apps that'll allow them to see where their coffee has gone after they've maybe sold it to their broker and then to the exporter, and where that went internationally outside of their country. And then even the further step on top of that would be then that farmer being able to use that blockchain traceability to then go after some financing, whether that's microfinancing. And you guys know we're doing a lot of work around supporting that coffee industry long-term. But that's really where I'm most excited about that is what it unlocks for our small family farms around the world. And those that just have maybe a hectare or 2 of coffee, and that's their full livelihood.
You're providing that technology and the training to use it to them?
We are. Those 9 farmer support centers that I talked about, they've had a tradition of using a lot of apps and tools already to help with kind of what's my P&L as a farmer and how do I make myself profitable and all the yield stuff I talked to. But then we're providing the apps as well for this traceability.
So let's see. So we have Dan who's operating his own apps, and I know he's a closet tech guy who's picking all these things. And you're providing apps out so that your partners who produce can go ahead and do it. And you did mention earlier that you're also providing apps at the store level. George, that really brings us to you because you're sort of in the middle here. You have a fresh product, and I believe that you have very specific and stringent guidelines for things like your burgers and your fries. Maybe the bacon milkshakes, I'm not sure, but they're very strict pieces there. And you also have franchisees and not licensees, but franchisees where you also have to have them communicating and being part of the whole process. Plus you also have global. So how does that challenge fit in for you as it relates to connecting with your franchisees, the sourcing of products, bringing it together, and I suppose since Carl opened it up, connecting with your customers?
Right. Yeah. Well, our purchasing team handles the, all of the sourcing part. So we have potato farmers, we have a couple of different beef vendors, and all that product gets sourced through one focal point and then distributed out through our vendors. So that piece is under the purchasing team's kind of guidance, and really all the products that we bring in have that, and it's up to the vendors who we bring on to hold up their end of the bargain to get the product from them. So, and as far as the global piece goes, and that can be tricky in a lot of regards because specifically with produce overseas, we have a lot of we don't go through the same kind of model that we do domestically. So, all of the different countries that we are in overseas are sourcing their product through a different, I don't want to say local produce company. They're typically on the larger side because they need to be. They need to be able to, to provide the product consistently. But there are some challenges with that too. More often than not, we're not able to integrate with some of these local vendors on the international side because they just don't have the technology.
And so I suppose, but they don't have the technology yet. You need to connect with them. So are you providing technology tools to them if they don't have them?
There's an option for that too within the back of the house office, kind of software that we use. There is an option for that. We've had a couple of our franchises take advantage of it, but it's not. There's a cost to it. So you have to leverage that. Is it worth it? And some instances where we're going to start having maybe up to 100 different locations in one country. I think that may happen in China for us, within the next few years. There's going to be some, there'll be a drive to get that electronic invoicing and that electronic piece integrated. And I don't believe it'll be a problem, but with the majority of the international locations, the primary products, the ground beef, the potatoes, the paper goods, and things like that are all sourced through one vendor, which is great because we can control it. There's a point of control, but the produce is a little bit of a roll of the dice.
And that really is the challenge almost to every restaurateur that is buying either produce or dairy. Or breads and things locally, especially when you have a diverse menu. And so Dan, I have to imagine that you have your finger on the pulse of exactly what you're selling, when you're selling it, and what you're able to get in and when you're going to get it, including where the truck is. But I suppose that also causes challenges for you. Because you are smaller there and your profitability is so tied to having the right products that are there. Are there particular steps or things that you're taking, especially when certain things may become scarce, in an environment that, help you to maintain the consistency and products?
So in a sense here, this is where we still rely on an old school approach, which is just about intensely systematized process, but done by humans. And so our group is really focused on excellent inventory, excellent tracking, and really tight recipe management and yield tracking. And so we know where our products are in-house. We cook everything from scratch. And so we are not tracking whole products. We're not buying pasta. We're making pasta. We're not buying bars of chocolate or, Twix bars. We're making our whole line of chocolate. And so pies, everything, sauces, dressings, we churn our own butter. So I haven't found excellent tech that lets me remove the human from the inventory process. I fantasize about it, and I know, like we've heard, Starbucks has the initiative, and I think when there's a more tangible product, right, like a fully made item, I really think that technology can provide a lot of solution. And I see a question in the chat box there. Auto replenishment. I am an example of sort of where and why our restaurant industry is so far behind. And that's because when we're cooking from scratch, we haven't yet found a tech solution. Now, we definitely have technology in the back office for inventory tracking and studying, following our P-mix back to our yield and understanding if we're down to, missing a tablespoon of flour. But I think, to just show you sort of like where I'm at with tech. I look for the technology solutions that can make my people more efficient and set them up to use their expertise, but we still need in what we do that human involvement to count what's on the shelf and to validate what's made in the prep room.
But you have a lot more control on that. And I would point out that while Founding Farmers is producing fresh and from scratch, one of the biggest challenges in our industry in the last couple of years is, for instance, a lot of the very large, global companies going to fresh meat, which changed the whole dynamic in the hamburger industry. And Carl, so George already knows that one, right? But in Starbucks, I'm not sure the timing of when you were there, but when they went and trialed the dinners and they were doing some other pieces there, they really were looking at how do we handle fresh, not semi-fresh, as package that's in there. But that does become as much of a challenge, I suppose, on your end as it does down at somebody who's operating down at the smaller end.
Yeah, we certainly played with the hyper fresh, is what we called it with what we called the Mercado line, and some of you might have seen that go into your stores and came out of the stores as well. And I think that, we ended up having that almost in half of our company-owned stores in the U.S. And that basically was, hey, if it's not sold today, it's donated tonight. And we did that together with a lot of food banks around the country. And so that wasn't prepared in store. It was still prepared at an offsite kitchen or commissary and then shipped in every night. Some of those other initiatives were before my time, Rob. But I did want to comment on Lou's question in the chat.
I was about to ask you to comment on that.
Yeah, so I can tell you, Lou, is that we've been doing auto replenishment in addition to the test that we're in the midst of right now, which is a total AI and machine learning and forecasting kind of driven auto replenishment. Our algorithms have been in place for a while to do auto replenishment on retail items like merchandise, like packaged foods in the front of the house, like bottled beverages, those kind of things. And so like most retailers, we've had that auto replenishment for several years before my time. The place where we were challenged, and I think the big thing that I would love, anybody out there that runs bars, is how do you auto replenish when you buy in eaches? Think about a syrup bottle, which is why we flavor the drinks, but then you dose in shot sizes or ounces, and your level of customization is insane. How many of you went to your Starbucks store this morning and ordered a latte, but with this and that and the other, or listened to somebody next to you or on their MOP order that? And so we're working on algorithms right now that would allow us to auto replenish those items, but that is a much more complex technology challenge than replenishing an eaches and eaches and each. And so that's where we're stuck right now a little bit, and we're playing with it. We got a lot of algorithms being tested. We're getting better all the time, but we still are not. We don't have that ready to launch out to our stores yet.
I'd point out to you that sometimes challenges create opportunities, and certainly the challenges of COVID in the last 9 months have created some opportunities. I think some people were really questioning whether delivery was going to be something that worked out, but they were questioning whether ghost kitchens were going to work out. And you mentioned commissaries maybe a little bit before your time, if you want to think about it, that Starbucks was doing that. But companies are going to get a second run at that now because a lot of people are doing virtual operations. We see chains doing that. We see independents expanding that way. So that gives the opportunity to do that. George, we have a question that I think really could go to you, because I think you have a foot in a number of camps from your history and what you're doing for Five Guys. Can you just sort of talk about the example of how do you connect supply chain management to the POS system? How does it all like flow?
It's a good question. All right, so basically within the application that I work with, everything has a recipe. Those recipes are then linked through the POS, whatever POS we're using, and for us, and it may be different for a lot of different restaurant groups, but we deplete. There's a file that comes across. So when your server rings in, a hamburger and a Coke and whatever the fries they have, that gets wrapped up into a file every 15 minutes, and then it gets electronically imported into our back office, and it depletes the inventory. So basically, what happens is you have the sale happening, the depletion of the inventory, and then the ordering process. So when you're creating that vendor order, it will show you in real time what you have on hand based on what you've inventoried and what you've depleted. So you have, the ability to create a suggested order. And we're getting to the point within our software application of doing some AI work. And taking a lot of the manual stuff out of that. That may be a few months away for us, anyhow. We've always been very interested in looking at the technological piece, and over really the last 2 or 3 years, we've really driving the bus on integrating as much as possible with all aspects, not even just purchasing, but with payroll and with HR and operations right on down the line.
Yeah, there is a lot of integration in there, and there are a lot of moving parts and pieces, but they do actually have to be connected. When you're taking a look at production, I'm sure if I asked Carl to take his Starbucks hat off and he put his KFC hat on, we might be talking about how do you do chicken runs and predict chicken that has to be done, on a 15-minute basis because of holding times. But Dan, you have that problem as well. You have a pretty diverse menu over there, and as you're going through your shifts, are you actually also connected in your system to try to predict what production you're going to need either later in the same shift or the next one?
So we're not using any machine learning to do, menu prediction tied back to forecasting. But what has held true for me for, I'm 50, so for the last 30 years is the consumer behavior with our menu. And even, I worked at different places before we had our own restaurants. The consumer behavior is really predictable. So, I'll talk to regular guests and they'll tell me how much they love the restaurant and this and that. And I say, oh, well, have you tried all the different things on the menu? And they say, oh, no, I get the chicken bolognese every time I'm there. So, we've got some basic software where we look for variances, but overall, we can pretty much predict based on the last 10 Tuesdays and the same Tuesday a year ago, and an overall trend of what we're pacing, sort of up, down, or flat overall with the mix. That barring when new trends come on, like obviously there are big changes when like something plant-based starts to shift. We've seen a lot of decision-making with the consumer shift to plant-based, but then you get your arms wrapped around the trend and you can see it. So we're still predicting it manually, but I see a lot of consistency from the customer.
So Dan, we're going to be moving to the next part in just a minute, but I do want to ask all three of you. I'm going to start with you, Dan, because you're really right there, with the guests and right in the heart of it. I would be totally remiss if we don't talk about food safety and COVID and what you might have had to do in that particular case. I'm not so sure, and I'd be interested in all your perspectives on two things, and then we'll go to the next part. Number one, what changes did you have to make to not just food safety, but safety in general? And how did that impact the supply chain? And then the second, good for you taking notes there, Dan. And then the second question is going to be, is it short term, or are the consumers, food safety and these things going to stay post-COVID? And not new norm, but really what is going to be the norm? So Dan, do you want to start?
I feel fortunate on this topic because my team pre-COVID and for many years has had an intense focus on food safety. And so while none of us had, infectious disease experience, as we learned really quickly in COVID, in addition to masks, our same protocols worked. So sanitizing surfaces and hand washing are incredibly effective. And so then you add in mask wearing. We also knew how to conduct self audits and how to measure our own performance. And we do that intensively. And we have a full-time, even though we're a small group, we have a full-time food safety person. And so what we decided to, I think the most maybe important thing we did from the very beginning was we decided that we were going to be totally transparent with our safety results. And so we put together a COVID dashboard with kind of several other metrics, and we put all the things that we were measuring, and we started publishing that out to our guests. And so I think, as we all know, when you keep score and you keep score publicly, you either want to win or you damn well get better fast.
And you have an app, right?
Yeah, we use it.
So can I see that on the app?
You can see it on our website. We publish the dashboard right there. And then we use an app for tracking all of our health screenings and check-ins, and then our staff on our
then people know how you're doing there.
Yeah, and then
of course the association itself actually is putting out a number of different tools and measurement that restaurateurs can take advantage of in order to do that as well. Carl, same question. Were there things that you had to put in place as a reaction to COVID, either on the food safety side or the customer side, that impact the supply chain? And then what do you think the long-term aspect of that is going to be, both with the consumer as well as your teams?
So there was certainly, and you guys remember back in March and April, I mean, we shut down all of our stores for just a little bit, and then we reopened quickly our drive-throughs. And then about 30 days later is when we opened the rest of our cafes. So all of the PPE, all of the different plexiglass shields that you'll now see in our stores, all of the 6-foot distancing dots that you might see on our floors, all those things are things that our supply chain had to help our store partners get and roll out. Certainly, I think, the coffee industry is one that we're fortunate that, we're not food first, we're coffee first. And we have a kill step with 195 to 200 degree coffee that's there. But the important thing is that we always have to keep in mind that that's going in the same place that your food's going. So that kill step is not definitely what we have to rely on. So we stepped up all of our cleaning, protocols, and then certainly hand sanitizing stations, everything like that. So there was just a flurry of activity. At the same time, I'm sure everybody on this call was doing that. And, everybody from Ecolab to anybody else was out of stock as well. So we all had to deal with that.
But it is creating some new businesses for people as well.
It is. And the amount of cold call emails that I'm sure you and I got, everybody on this phone call, from kind of startups that wanted to sell you something and you had no idea of their reputation and you didn't do anything without vetting them out, was important. In terms of the long term on this, I think what we've all learned to do, and whether it's the third wave or the second wave, I don't know what wave we're in right now, but we've been able to set up protocols as restaurants and ourselves as Starbucks that we want to be a step ahead of the regulators. So whether that's the state government or the federal government or the local municipality or county, we want to pull the cords and the levers before they pull it on us. So we've always said that we will keep our own statistics, we'll have our own medical experts, and because of that, I think we've been a step ahead from the day this started.
Great. And George, I'm going to leave the last answer to this one to you. So any impact and changes you had to make, how they impact the supply chain, and what do you think are going to be the long-term impacts on that?
Yeah, well, initially when things first started to go south, within that first few weeks, gathering resources, so to speak, with especially masks, a lot of that stuff didn't go through my platform. It was done as you see it, you buy it. So we were using credit cards to buy masks from people that had them available. So it was a little bit of the Wild West, sanitizer as well. So, and we were prior to COVID, in my opinion, because I've worked in a lot of restaurants, our hygiene standards, our sanitation specs were among the highest I've ever been in. I've never seen any, an environment, and I had to train in a couple of the stores, so I saw it firsthand. So before we had a lot of systems in place, washing hands all the time, not touching your face, right on down the line. So post COVID, not only do we have that great balance before everything went south, but now we have added on the plexiglass. We've added on the sanitizing stations. So now, and now these things are starting to flow through, our vendors, where before it was just grab what you can. So moving forward, it's going to be a part of life, for all of us, for potentially forever. Moving forward, this could be a permanent part. Maybe not so much on the plexiglass and things of that nature. Maybe there'd be some relaxation with the masks, but I wouldn't be surprised if they stayed in place for a period of time after things settle down. The sanitizing, that's going to be in place. I think every restaurant out there probably right now either has a station in place when you first walk through the door, and you give them your phone number so they can track you. And I don't see that changing.
All right. Well, listen, I want to thank all of you. We didn't get to all the questions, but here's my suggestion for you. So first, let me thank George and Carl and Dan for really starting the conversation that we hope are going to continue in the breakout sessions. And I also want to thank our sponsors, Armada and Infor, and of course, Fortinet, our title sponsor, for putting on the first part of this. We are going to go to breakout sessions, and in the breakout sessions, you're going to have the opportunity to talk with your peers and continue this conversation. There's a facilitator in each one of the sessions, and you'll get to meet them when you go in. They'll take some notes, and when you come out in about 20 minutes, and we'll send a note about that, we're going to ask to hear your report. The one question I didn't get to ask, and maybe you'll talk about in your breakout session, is about RFID. And I know a lot of people are looking at that as one way to track, and that may be something that you want to look to as well. So with that, let's go ahead and break out into groups, into the breakout sessions, and then we'll get reconvene in about 20 minutes and have a great time continuing the discussion.
That was definitely interesting. We also, of course, approach the element related to all the importance of traceability, FSQA, and things on sustainability and supply chain, helped by IT, which is for sure something even more important today and which will last for the long run. We did approach the LTO management technology. There seems to be a real need there, and that's maybe something also to dig further for us on homework on getting back to the group, and leading to also, a further support coming from distribution on broadliners when it comes to those LTO. We also approach the consumer habit changing, and of course we have got the pickup, the curbside, and a lot of evolution and innovation had to happen there fairly rapidly for many operators, which are working for many as well. But it's how do you tailor your new service and your new offering for those change of consumer habit, where Carl was mentioning, they used to have a lot of people coming up and pick up coffee in the morning on their way to work. Well, now that's not so much the case. So definitely some solid elements there on helping the all our different expertise based on what the consumer want today and will want tomorrow, and what will stay after COVID. How can we call after the new norm? So those are really the key elements which were coming out, and I think would be of interest to look at it further along the line.
Thank you. You covered a lot in that hour, that session you just had. Lou, if you want to go ahead and report for our group.
Sure. We spent some time talking about the economics of the supply chain. Katie Barnes is a fresh produce buyer, and the issues with fresh produce that we all experienced in the restaurants. I asked the question, well, how come I didn't see that translate to my retail purchasing in grocery store? And with the collapse of the demand, with dining rooms closing and really basically ruined the economics for the distributors to get that product to our restaurants. So a lot of that product was diverted to retail because people were buying from the grocery stores, which I thought was it was an interesting insight for me. I hadn't thought about it that way. Lorraine talked about one of the things that they had to deal with as a challenge was with so many people not working in offices or in common areas where they would normally ship, for example, hygiene products in bulk. To field-based folks, they came up with this concept of kitting, where they would take bulk packaged items like hand sanitizer, masks, and other things, break them down into an individual kit that somebody would need for a week or a month, and then ship them directly to that individual, as opposed to shipping to a central location. And then that location would end up distributing, or the employee would actually come and requisition whatever they needed. The thought there was that kitting probably will be around going forward. We had a conversation around forecasting and how many of us had issues with the fact that our forecasting systems are based on history, but history had no meaning, and therefore it was very hard to determine what your demand was going to be, so that you could actually place your orders. That kind of led back to this concept of the cash and the economics of the supply chain, tying it back to that initial conversation that we had, where many of us, for cash flow reasons, wanted to basically stop the supply chain, because as a retail outlet, we had no demand to then distribute that to the end consumer, which again created a lot of economic problems in the supply chain. But then as soon as we started opening up dining rooms, everything needed to shift back, and so it was like turning the Titanic for the industry for the supply chain industry to service our restaurants. That was another interesting insight. There was one thing that was brought up, and it's something that Red Lobster did do, and I'm sure several of us in the meeting today did, but we did divert some of our inventory to retail locations. So where we maybe had bulk product maybe sitting in a central location. I think salmon was one of them that I think we actually sold salmon to Publix, quite honestly. So just kind of going back to that concept of moving it from the restaurant endpoint to retail. And then we started getting into to a conversation around if employee expectations had changed. We kind of really didn't get there, but Katie did tie it back to, when there was the supply chain issue with fresh produce, that employee confidence really started to drop because they didn't connect the dots between the issues in the supply chain and the fact that they were out of product in their stores. We didn't really get very far into that. I think we probably could have spent a good 15 or 20 minutes on that one topic alone. But I think that's kind of the high level of the things that we touched on.
Great. Thank you, Luke. Lauren?
So my group talked about a number of things that have been previously mentioned, but we were really kind of stuck on 2 points. One with regard to where the employee or guest expectation was, and Lo had touched on this briefly, but we were talking about the fact that you've got some customers who want to go back to their pre-COVID experience, whether the restaurant is going to give it to them or not. Some who only want to eat outside with every COVID precaution taken, but still within the restaurant environment. Some who will only do curbside, and some who won't leave their house at all. And so in an effort to kind of appease and react to all of those expectations, providing transparency and open communication with your community was key. It was also clear that, many operations needed new technology. And, oftentimes a lot of people were constrained, cash wise. So it was a question of whether or not they could tweak the current technology that they had, or where they needed new implementation across the board. Budgets also came up a lot about the fact that strategic plans no longer seem to align with the funds that are coming in, and how do you address that? And the fact that contract pricing has become an issue across the board because, there are so many different things that play into contract pricing that may or may not have been affected by COVID, may or may not have been able to be addressed in the current situation, so on and so forth. And then finally, although I guess, this is maybe to put it on a low note, it has been made abundantly clear that those who have put off their technology advances are the ones who are struggling the most in the industry. And so being able to recognize where you can make those advances, either small or large, those are really key areas to focus on.
Great. Well, thank you for that. And Seamus.
Thanks, Rob. A couple of things that we talked about a lot of different things, but one of the first things we discussed was the fact that the outlook here is probably June 2021 for a return to normal, if you will, but it's not going to be normal, but at least prospective indoor dining on a consistent basis. I think that's a couple of things in the Midwest, upper Midwest here. I'm in Chicago. We're headed into winter very quickly here, and that won't really change until probably the May timeframe. So outdoor dining is not something that's going to be readily available in a number of parts of the country. And keeping in mind the fact that, again, we're looking at another 6, 7, 8 months of this. One of the things that has changed for the long term, one of the questions I asked, and that is the takeout and delivery piece of things. Despite packaging and despite raw materials, mainly packaging, being readily available all the time, and obviously there's costs impact connected to that. People have gotten better with takeout and delivery, and that's going to be, and that increasing as a percentage of their overall output and revenue. That's going to be something that we probably see for quite a while, because there are going to be people that, despite a vaccine, despite mandates to open back up, they're simply not going to feel comfortable as they did before of dining back in. Another point that was made, and we've heard this in one form or another, was there continue to be issues with inventory availability, and whether that's food itself, or Karen brought up an example of the fact that the beverage industry and beverage alcohol industry have a lot of new brands hitting the market, a lot of seltzers, hard seltzers. But they're having a very difficult time getting aluminum for cans. So that's just one, example of how inventory management, use of technology for inventory management is going to continue to play a role. And then lastly, we are seeing ghost kitchens continue to grow as a means of supporting even places like Applebee's, and there was one other mention, I failed to write it down, but we're seeing the ghost kitchen concept coming more into play as an end run to some of these challenges in the supply chain. So that's kind of a fair recap
Great.
of what we discussed.
Well, before we just wrap up, let me just share a couple of observations on this. We covered an awful lot of subjects. I mean, and we are going to send out a post. We are going to send out a post gathering synopsis of things, but you guys discussed a lot of stuff in a very short period of time. But what it says to us is that there's a lot of opportunity out there to continue this discussion, and I hope that you'll do that and also communicate on both sides. That's going to wrap up this side of the conversation today. I want to thank our sponsors again of Armada and Infor. It was very helpful to have you and also Fortinet on the discussions, as well as supporting this, because your input and what you guys see in the industry from each one of your perspectives, which is different, was actually very helpful to us. And I don't know if you would like to say just a couple of words of thank you yourself there, Sean, but we do appreciate your support.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I appreciate everyone taking the time to partake in the discussion. I mean, I think we had some very interesting conversations. I learned a lot, I'll tell you, on some of the prospects and customers that were on the line. And we're always here to help. So if anybody really is looking for a thought leader in this area on the technology side, we'd love to help. And Courtney Radke, who's our CISO for retail, did 10 years over at Sonic Drive-In Hamburger and has lots of experience in what you guys go through, and then can now talk about it through the eyes of the vendor. So that's also an opportunity for you guys to leverage. So thank you very much.
Well, thank you. We appreciate your support. And with that, there is another gathering on December 10th at 3 p.m., and that'll be a Thursday. The subject there is going to be how to gain customer data, and it requires the new communication initiatives. I think that's going to be a very interesting conversation like we had today, because the other side of this is, what do you do and how do you collect, and how do you, in fact, leverage and turn challenges into opportunities through customer data. And that'll be our next one. We hope you'll all join us and ask your colleagues to as well. With that, on behalf of the IFBTA, I'd like to thank you all for joining, again, our sponsors, but really all of you as attendees. And partnerships really work well. I'm going to actually leave the closing remarks and the one to take us to the drinks to Seamus. But we do appreciate you joining us today, and we are understanding really where the two groups come together between technology, supply chain, food safety, and all of those various subjects we did today. So on behalf of the IFBTA, I want to thank you. Seamus, over to you.
Thanks, Rob. We'll make this quick. Those of you who are pressed for time, please, head out if you need to. On the other hand, if you have a few minutes, we have a partnership, a very valuable partnership with Beam Suntory, headquartered here in Chicago. I'm sure you're aware of them. They have a number of great brands. But one of the brands that they just brought on board is On the Rocks. On the Rocks is headquartered out of Dallas. They started in 2016, started by three gentlemen who had worked in the industry, either as bartenders, chefs, or what have you. But they put this brand together with the idea of providing a higher quality, ready-to-drink cocktail. And the way they did that was the basis of it is using premium spirits. So we provided, those of you who provided us home mailing addresses by Thursday of last week, you should have received a small box. Those of you who got sent your or provided your mailing addresses after that, those will be going out today. And anyone else that would like this who hasn't provided your mailing information, please hit us with that and we'll make sure you get some of these. We provided two of their more populars, one being the Knob Creek Old Fashioned. And then we also provided a jalapeno pineapple margarita that's made with the Salsa brand Tres Generaciones, which is a very, very nice tequila, one of my old brands from years ago.
That's a different story.
Yeah, that's a different story. Anyway, you've probably been glued to the screen. You don't have a glass, but these can be poured over ice and enjoyed immediately. You can also garnish them in the case of the old fashioned with, a cherry and or a orange rind, some lime with the margarita. So we encourage you to check them out. These are the small 100 ml. They have a 200 ml bottle. They also have a 375 that you'll see at retail. They're in national distribution. Again, they started in 2016. Beam just acquired them and brought them on board just a few months ago. So with Beam's distribution horsepower, you're going to see them at beverage alcohol retail and at grocery here very soon if you haven't already. So we hope you enjoy them. We thought it'd be a nice little closure to today's discussion. We didn't want to extend things as far as time too much, but if you're so inclined, check them out and let us know what you think. We'd love to push the information back to the guys at On the Rocks at Beam, and that's about it. So, Rob,
Drink up.
Yeah, drink up.
We're going to just continue the conversation now, just in our own little happy hour. So, for a few minutes.
Hey guys, I gotta take off. It was thanks for inviting me. It was great. Learned a lot. Nice to meet you all, and keep me posted if there's anything else that you need. I'd be happy to join in.
Great, thank you.
Very much.
So old friends on the call here. Kathleen, I guess you probably saw the announcement that Vic joined the board of the IFBTA.
No, I didn't.
Oh, we better send it. It was posted out there. So yeah, he's joined our board. And Rob, how are you?
I'm doing good. Damn mute button.
Yeah, well, it's fun. And let's see, Karen. And who are you with, Karen?
Karen is on mute.
Yeah, there she is. Karen? No, we may have lost her there. So, were there any particular, just sort of how's it going, or any particular things that just sort of come to mind? It's a small group right now, but it's actually a mixed group. So, which is interesting. Mike, you've spent a lot of times in the industry from the supplier side, and I just sort of wonder, how you're seeing people faring, from your side.
Well, like I mentioned on our earlier breakout session, it's within for all the other verticals are doing very, very well. But I focus on the restaurant, so it's been a little bit of a challenge seeing a lot of executives seeing their employees challenged and struggling, and I think that's been the biggest thing that has been a change for me is just the vulnerability of, I think it's bringing us all together. It'll make us stronger in the long run, but it's been, from my standpoint, dealing with all levels of the organizations, it's been a struggle for everyone being at home. I get locked out of my house all the time. So it's, and I'm joking about that because we're all home now.
But you were being locked out before COVID, right?
Well, yeah, but I have an excuse now, Rob, and, so I think it's interesting. A lot of it's working with our employees, working with our families, trying to balance that. I can't tell you how many photo bombs we have had with grandkids on demos. I think everyone's just getting a lot more flexible, a lot more relaxed, and we're all kind of coming together. And this industry has struggled more than any others. So it's been unique from that standpoint. But I think it's going to make us a lot more resilient in the long run.
Kathleen, how's it going for you guys? You're down the street, but I never get to see you because of this whole thing.
Yeah, I know, and we need to meet up for coffee. And I know you suggested, but I've been busy the last couple months as well, like everybody else, right? So we thought we started to get some traction. I think September and October were good for us, and then now lockdowns again, right? So Chicago locked down all our restaurants about a week ago for dine-in. All our Canadian restaurants in Ontario have been locked down for 3 weeks now, and now Montgomery County and in Maryland is locking down to only 25% dine-in. So as you're hitting the seasonality, where you kind of usually have some seasonality before holidays, so it'll be interesting to see what happens over the holiday season and with this second wave. But
Great, Rob, are you?
We're very fortunate. So I even hate saying it in a crowd, especially with people in casual dining and fine dining, but we're very fortunate. Obviously, we had a terrible March, and then ever since then, it's just gone up. So we've been very fortunate. Sales are positive now. Our CEO took some measures, a couple of years ago. One of them is solid declining in restaurant dining, at least for us, and knew that we needed, new containers for the food. So when they left the premises, it wouldn't be soggy, that type of stuff. So, probably took a year to find the right container with all the regulations involved, as well as something that does something cost effective as well. Digital ordering, 5 years ago, I think it was 2.5 orders a day on average. Now it's 30%. If you include the third party, it's probably 30%, and just we did a lot of stuff in the last 3 years, and the pandemic really set everything else that we had in motion into play. We had, that month of March, we had restaurants basically told them not to close regardless of what, and they would do anything. Some of them that didn't have drive-throughs made a drive-through, just shipped, got a long cord to the point of sale, really right out there. Did curbside without any curbside stuff. We rolled out curbside online ordering maybe 2 weeks later. So once again, very fortunate, very grateful.
I think that when all this is over, there's an opportunity for the Restaurant Association to really take a look at what was done, what worked, and how it changes the industry going forward, both in day parts, revenue opportunities. May actually create some new groups, in here that for Seamus or Lo that may not have thought about it before, but all of a sudden things like packaging and safety products obviously became not just Georgia Pacific now, but really became a big deal, and then getting, all the people that had to accommodate and make things work. And I don't know, but before we cut off, we really haven't asked the association, what is your observation in this and outlook? And I know we could read that, but maybe you have an immediate thought, even based on your discussions today.
Well, Lo speaking, I'm just jumping in quickly. I mean, obviously there is a lot of, research and look into what has been going on and is happening, which is being worked around. One thing the association is working on is, as you have well, probably all of you know about it. You know, every year we will do the big state of the industry report, which takes many months to prepare. I know they are looking at doing it differently and to come up more with things which are in the current rather than, you know, taking so long to dig into things. So we should have some elements coming from from our research team and things out in subsequent level for the beginning of the year. And then there are a lot of things which have been out there. It's just a matter of, you know, for everybody knowing where to find them. And the news and media have been very active with some snapshot of things. But definitely, you know, being also, complex for everyone to adapt to the new way of working and to be on the top of things. So definitely a lot has been going on our side. And I would, finish on that point. It's also making sure we are informing our members as much as we can on all what's going on in terms of reopening, safety, closure. And I've been spending a lot of time personally just sending information to our different groups so that people know what's going on. And, you know, you don't have to look for the information, but we are bringing you the information, and hopefully that's helping you to do your job better and easier. So,
Right.
To Lo's point, Rob, we our state of the industry is coming out in mid-January. We're going to do at least 2 of those next year, and as she said, we're trying to make it current and forward-looking, in as much as in the past it's been rearwards looking. So we're going to kick off the year with a very comprehensive report that we think will add a lot of value. If anyone's interested in hearing more about that, let us know. The other thing we're very committed to next year, and we're really changing our business model on a wholesale level, is connectivity and connectivity of communities. You know, I think in the past things have operated more in a vacuum or in a silo when you look across different functions. And what we're seeing now is more effort to have marketing folks bump up against supply chain folks because we're doing that in real life anyway. And also expanding these communities so it's not just the big folks when we talk and bring together the supply chain community or the
innovation, as we heard today, occurs at the smaller level. They can move more quickly, right. And they did actually. I think that's, you know, getting more engaged perhaps gives a better opportunity to be more engaged even with the states on that.
Right. So it's a very difficult time, but we're excited to kind of move beyond 2020 and get into 2021.
Right.
So we're getting smarter.
Well, I think on that note, I want you to know that I'm not drinking a Starbucks drink here. I'm drinking a margarita. So I see you have yours. Listen, I want to thank you guys for sticking with us today. And also, of course, Rob and Kathleen are 2 main industry leaders on the IT side. So it's great to have them both here too, just speaking for me, but I know they're working with you too, Lo. So we're going to go do some feedback on this and get our post reports out, but it's been fun having a drink with you virtually.
Thank you. Thank
and
you.
Our thanks to Patty for all the facilitation. Patty,
yeah, Patty, we've left you behind the scenes.
He's here.
And she should have her drink too.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Thank you, guys.
Great. Have a great day.
Rob, thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.